It's time for a Drummer Nation. Erik Hargrove gained an international reputation during the 7 years he spent performing all over the world with the great James Brown. On that gig, Erik shared the stage with Michael Jackson, Sting, Lenny Kravitz, Elton John, and many more. With the death of James Brown, Erik toured with fellow Brown alumnus, bassist Bootsy Collins. After a stint drumming with the Ringling brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus, Erik now makes his home in Thailand, where he lives and works with notable Thai artists. My interview with Erik Hargrove, up next on Drummer Nation.
Hi, this is Stanton Moore. I've been playing and teaching drums for over 30 years. My new site, Stanton Moore Drum Academy, is the perfect online drum learning platform for any level drummer to learn how to play the drums the same way I did. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you as subscribers on the site, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
When seated at the drums, pressure on the tailbone, lower back, and hip joints can lead to pain. Only Carmichael drum thrones are scientifically designed to relieve and prevent discomforts associated with prolonged sitting. Carmichael thrones, we got your back.
I absolutely love playing drums, and I couldn't imagine not having that in my life. And I really, if I could help facilitate that and have an impact on your life so that you can play drums, that means the world to me.
Created specifically for practice sessions, quiet tone practice cymbals by Sabian are designed to respond and feel like traditional cymbals, right down to their clearly defined bell, so the drummers won't have to change the way they play. Quiet tone practice cymbals by Sabian.
Welcome to Drummer Nation, where my guest today is a good friend of mine I haven't seen in forever, Erik Hargrove. How are you, Erik?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Well, thank you. Thanks for doing the show, and it's great to see you. And you're in Singapore, no less.
Yes, I am, and I'm honored to be on your show. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, the honor is mine. We worked together when I was working with Bosphorus Cymbals, and you were one of our treasured artists, and always did proud by us. We were delighted to be associated with you. You're still with those guys, right?
Yeah, I have been. And next year marks 20 years for me with this company.
Well, good for you. I miss those trips to Istanbul. I used to love that city. Have you ever been over there?
Yeah, I went for the first time to check out the factory and see how everything was made, and it was life-changing to see all of that.
Isn't it? It's just amazing. Well, extend my hellos to Hassan, and Ibo. Those are the three musketeers there at Bosphorus. I wish them well.
I definitely will do that. I definitely will.
Let's talk about your background before we get into shop talk.
Sure.
I like to eventually just be a couple of guys talking about drums. But let's talk originally about, specifically about where you came from. Where are you from?
I'm from a small town called Washington, Pennsylvania. It's an hour south of Pittsburgh. And
you got involved with drums as a little kid, or what?
Yeah, in grade school. The high school came to our grade school and did this big join the band campaign, and they wanted all the kids to play instruments, so they had different songs featuring different instruments. And when they got to the drums, they did the theme for Hill Street Blues, if you remember that.
Sure.
And they had two drummers who are still friends of mine today, Robbie Throckmorton and Jeff Thomas. Louis Thomas were the two drummers, and they did a synchronized drum solo. It wasn't like trading back and forth. They did the exact same thing. All the kids went crazy. So they had these interviews with the bandmaster, and he asked all the kids, so what instrument do you want to play? And of course, they had 1,000 kids who wanted to play the drums just because of that drum solo. So when it came my turn, he asked me, and of course I said drums. And he said, look, we've got way too many kids that are playing drums. You got great lips. Why don't you play, tuba or something like that? And I didn't blink an eye. I didn't think of the kind of the connotation for that. But, I said, no, drums. And he said, okay. You're the last one. So out of all those kids, there were maybe 10 of us that actually stayed with it. you know.
Hey everybody out there in cyber world, this is Adam Nussbaum.
Hi, Dave DeCenzo here.
Hi, Bermuda Schwartz here.
Hey everyone, Stanton Moore here.
Hey guys, Johnson Pesta here.
Hey everybody, this is John J.R. Robinson.
Hi, Todd Zuckerman here for the Drum Center of Portsmouth. They're knowledgeable, they'll be able to help you and guide you and make the right choices for you and the music that you play.
From Wingnut to Wuhan, these chaps know what they're talking about. Highly recommended. But what do I know? I'm a drummer.
And it's kind of a life circle that happened. Some years later, of course, I went on to play with James Brown, 2 drummers, yeah? And while on tour with James Brown, I met the drummer who recorded Hill Street Blues. Yeah, I think his name was, I pulled it up here earlier, Willie Ornelius. Yeah. Yeah, he at that point he was playing with Jim Belushi's band. Yeah, so it was kind of, and I'm talking to this guy, and I story about, you know, how I got started playing drums, and he was like, I was the guy that recorded that soundtrack. And I was like, whoa.
Full circle.
Yeah, full circle.
Well, it also went full circle in another way in that you found yourself in another band with 2 drummers. With James Brown. So before we get to Brown, though, you did a stint in the Army?
Yeah, I did 9 years in the Army, right out of high school, because I was kind of following in the footsteps of my friend, the drummer Robbie Throckmorton. He was 4 years ahead of me. He went on to the Army and played in the Army band. So when it came time for graduate high school, I'm like, okay, so what am I going to do? I want to play drums, so this is a way to do it. It's a career. You know, they give you college money, you know, all kind of perks. I didn't start off in the band. I got roped into doing a different job, actually a combat arms job.
You don't want that job.
Yeah, where you go and find the enemy.
Yeah.
You know, you're the first person to get shot at.
Yeah, we don't want that.
So, yeah, I did that for maybe 8 months. And then I got myself transferred to the band while I was in Germany. I was stationed in Germany and got transferred to the Frankfurt.
Thank you for your service, and I'm glad you didn't get your ass shot out there doing that.
Got a couple of missiles shot at me during the first Gulf War, but
came out whole, thank God. So, what was your gig in the band there?
Just playing everything. So, military bands are comprised of maybe 40 people, and with those 40 people, you have to play everything. So there's concert bands, there's smaller bands like brass quintets, and you know, there's big bands, there's jazz combos, there's salsa bands, there's top 40 bands, you know, all comprised of those people. You have to be able to do it all.
So that was a great experience for you, right?
It definitely was.
I'll bet. When you came out of the service, is that where you were when you were in Augusta, when you were in the service?
Yes, I was stationed.
Okay, so take me into the James Brown gig. How did that happen? Did you audition for it? Did you know somebody? Did they know you, or how did it come down? All of the above. Walk me through it.
My new site, Stanton Moore Drum Academy, is the perfect online drum learning platform for any level drummer to learn how to play the drums the same way I did, with the advantage of having me road test the material on hundreds of stages, countless clinics, lessons, and master classes, and dozens of studio sessions every year. On the site, you'll find over 13 hours of video, dozens of written lessons, and fresh material gets added all the time.
While I was stationed there, there was a place called the Word of Mouth Cafe, and it was owned by Dave and Ann Weston, who were former James Brown alumni.
He's from Augusta, right?
James Brown or
Brown,
or he grew up in that area.
Okay.
he's actually from South Carolina.
That's right. That's right.
Just across the border.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so Dave Weston, if you've seen the movie The Blues Brothers, Dave Weston is the bass player in that church scene with James Brown.
Okay.
So him and his wife, this restaurant nightclub, and I played in the band with them. So I would hear stories, about James Brown doing this and doing that, and they were like horror stories. So I'm thinking, I was like, wow, I would never play with that guy. That's what I'm thinking at the time. I'm hearing these stories. But then a drummer friend of mine, I saw him on the street, and he was like, yeah, man, I just for James Brown, but my band is about to really blow up. We're doing all these things. We're about to get signed. I'm not going to do the gig. And a big light bulb just went off in my head and was like, go, go, go. So yeah, I knew some people in the band at the time. I talked to some people. I got to meet Mr. Brown and went to his Christmas party. And then about a week later after that, I got a call that said, he wants you to come audition. There's 3 gigs down in Florida. You'll either play down there, or you'll either audition down there, or you'll come back to Augusta and audition. Okay, cool. He said it'll be you and another drummer. Okay, so they flew me down there. I met some more of the cats who I'd never met before. Went to sound check, and at first it's just the drummers that are setting things up before the rest of the band comes in. So the other drummer, Robert Thompson, nicknamed Mousy, hey, why don't you set up this drum set and let's see what kind of chops and everything you got. So, okay, so we played around different grooves and stuff, and he was like, "Great, man." He said, "You'll do great on the gig tonight." And I said, "What?"
Say what?
Yeah, exactly. Say what? Like, no. Somebody else come and audition, and we're just supposed to watch the show. He's like, "No, you're playing tonight." And I'm like, oh boy. So the rest of the band comes in, they do sound check. Mr. Brown comes in, and he comes and sits behind the organ like he mostly did every time he came to sound check. And he's playing around. Everybody, he sees me, he said, "Come here, son." So I walked up and I shook his hand and said, "How you doing, son?" I said, "I'm great, Mr. Brown. How are you?" He said, "Son, I heard a lot about you. Let's see what you can do." I said, okay. Sat down, and what he did was he picked one of the segues to audition me with, something I had never heard before. Mm-hmm. So he had Mousy play it, and then he had me play it. And I didn't play it perfect, but I thought I played it pretty good. And he stopped everybody, and he said, "Son, welcome aboard."
That's a great story, man. Thank you for relating that. Now, obviously, you were familiar with the man's music.
I wasn't like deep into James Brown. I knew some of his songs. I had heard a lot of his songs, but I had never played those songs. And the weird thing about it is, if you're trying to play those songs like the record, he's going to take you out. He doesn't want to hear that.
That was my next question. So it wasn't a gig where you had to know the parts verbatim, every little open hi-hat and every accent and every ghosted note. He wanted you to come on and bring Erik Hargrove to the gig.
No.
Okay, well, tell me.
He wanted you to bring what was in his head.
He wanted you to read his mind.
He wanted you to read his mind. He had something he was hearing night per night. This wasn't just like all the time. This was night per night, trying to guess what he wanted at that particular time.
Hi, Todd Zuckerman here. I'm talking about the Carmichael throne. I've been using it for 3 years, and I'm a firm believer in it, being that I was a sufferer of lower back pain and some chronic back issues. And I always try to sit up and have really good posture so that tailbone sits right in the crevice. It really is a life changer. So yeah, if you have any fatigue, any physical problems, you really owe it to yourself to check it out. Danny, thank you not only for saving my butt, but for saving my back as well.
Because there were times where we'd have a sound check. Sound checks were, if he came, it was almost always a 2-hour rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just him changing this, changing that, or whatever. And he would change drum grooves, and he would come sit behind the drums and, play it like this, play it like this. So you'd sit behind after him and you'd play it, and he's like, yeah, that's it. Play it like that tonight. So here it comes that night. Time to play. Go. You play it just like you played it at sound check, and he points to the other drummer, and you're not playing anymore. What happened?
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah. And he'll turn around, look at you, and smile and shake his head no.
Well, it seems to me, if I may interject, and I hope people understand, Eric's in Singapore, so there's a little delay, and we're trying not to talk over one another. But it seems to me like that would be preferable because it's fresh, it's new every day. He's composing on the spot. He's always giving you some new challenges, and it keeps you on your toes. You have to listen.
Challenge is a good word. Mm-hmm. Maybe not strong enough, but it's a good word.
So those other stories about Brown being a piece of work are true, right?
A taskmaster, yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he wanted what he wanted before you knew he was thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In general, was he supportive?
James Brown was a man who his thoughts went one place to the other from minute to minute, and so did his moods. Mm. Almost literally minute to minute. So you never knew which Mr. Brown you were dealing with, or if you started with one, who you're going to end up with. Mm-hmm. So there were times he was a terror, but there were times that he was super cool, and he was like your best friend, and all in between. And in both of those extremes and in the in-betweens, it took me a while to realize that I have the honor of playing with a living legend, a man who created a style of music, a man that in his day coming up, putting out records, there were times where a black man wasn't allowed to have his face on records.
Right.
So coming through that, and here he is now, still at 70 years old, mm-hmm. And still has more energy than most of the people in the band. Yeah, when you start thinking of it that way, the terror kind of subsides a little bit, but only a little bit.
Well, he was a social cultural icon. He was considered a civil rights leader to some extent. Mm-hmm. So essentially you're saying that he was a complicated man. Like, I know a lot of people have had, like, a Buddy Rich taskmaster.
Sure. There are definitely similarities there.
Yeah. I worked for a guy when I was on the Glenn Miller Band as the Ghost Band, who had learned from Tommy Dorsey, who had taught Buddy Rich how to be an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. It's such a profound musical experience that you kind of put those negatives behind you.
Yeah, it completely gets lost, mm-hmm. Because it doesn't matter anymore.
Was the business end of it right?
At times.
Okay. Now, all right, so how many years did you do that?
I was with them for 7 years.
We had a space out there. 7 years, you said?
7 years.
Wow.
I left a year before he died.
I know it's right around in there. So he must have loved you to stay on that band for 7 years, in spite of the difficulties in his prickly personality. And you don't keep a gig for 7 years if you're not taking care of business, especially as a drummer with James Brown.
Yeah, and he made sure that I'm keeping you because I like you. And he stayed on you no matter what you did. Mm-hmm. Right, he was still on you to make you do better. Mm.
I think what our cymbals brought to the Sabian family is that there is lots more hand hammering. They're all hand hammered, and so you really have to perfect the hammering technique and where to hammer on the cymbal. You don't want to get the cymbal too thin in a lot of places. They were willing to try it, and I think we came out with a great product that is a great musical instrument.
So I imagine looking back at it, it's an experience you wouldn't trade
for anything in the world.
Mm-hmm. And that's in your resume, man. You did James Brown for 7 years, and you looked up from behind the kit, and there was a freaking legend in front of you. Putting out some energy, you had a match.
It was crazy to see all these other legends come on stage with him and perform with us, and when they're in his presence, to see them almost cringing.
Mm-hmm.
The humbling look on their face. These mega stars that would come up to him and, oh, Mr. Brown, it's so great to, and I'm thinking, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also something that showed, for lack of a better word, his power.
There's I forget the movie it's from. One of the documentaries has a story where they're doing a TV filming thing, and it goes on for a long time with a lot of bands, but Brown, Eric, you call him Brown? Is that what you call him, or Mr. Brown, or?
Mr. Brown, yes.
Yeah, Mr. Brown wanted to headline and be the last one, even though it was all being taped, and the Rolling Stones got that slot. So James Brown came out before them and just devastated it, man. Left them nothing to play, nothing to do, to where Mick Jagger, as much of a showman as he is, felt, what's he going to do, man? He's got to follow James Brown.
Yeah.
So James Brown kind of thought, all right, you're going to make me not the headliner. Let him follow that.
Yeah.
And the Stones were kind of embarrassed.
Yeah. And it's those kind of groups who really looked up to him.
Mm-hmm.
James crossed genres. There's megastars from all kind of genres who looked up to him, to even emulated, some of the things that he did,
Mm-hmm.
and musically and, show-wise.
Now let me ask you about this. I saw a movie recently, a documentary on the tune Apache from the Incredible Bongo Band. Do you know anything about that?
I've seen something recently. It was a documentary. Yeah, talking about the bongo band.
Yeah, it was off my radar altogether, and it turns out they took Funky Drummer Beat, I think, as the basis of it, and it became the one of the formula. I'm going to cut this part. It became a big part of the whole hip hop thing. The whole was based on that
Apache.
On Apache. Yeah. So, well, I'll stumble. Neither one of us really know much about that, so I'll cut that.
Yeah, I know the guy who produced that was had worked for one of the Kennedys.
Mm-hmm.
It was Bobby Kennedy.
Yeah, I think you're right. Let's move on. Speaking of, let me get back into this. Just a little more on James Brown. What would you say you learned from working with him?
Music-wise, just how to listen more to the musicians around you. How to work with that front person, how to take from the front person, because a lot of things that he did happened with cues, whether they were verbal cues or they were physical gestures. And you had to be able to catch those at a moment's notice and play what you needed to play. Segue, or as an actual cut to the next song, whether he said, going from Cold Sweat to Me, and he cut and then give a downbeat, you had to be right there without missing a beat. So being able to react person or any changes in the music, I think is invaluable.
Harvey Mason was on the show recently, and he said to be a great drummer, you have to be a great listener.
Oh yeah,
So-
yeah. Otherwise, you're just playing by yourself.
Right, but especially in that situation where the stuff is changing on the fly every night on stage.
Yeah.
And you've got a taskmaster who knows exactly what he wants. One other thing I remember from a movie, but just in general about James Brown, is he thought of the whole band as drummers. Did he ever talk about that?
He didn't specifically in those terms, but when he would like give different players their parts, he would speak in rhythmic terms that was more maybe drum oriented, where it's something a drummer would catch, you know, faster than say a horn player.
Right.
So his whole basis was rhythmic things, and the melodic things kind of came second to that.
Right. Well, you know, music has melody, chords, melody, harmony, and rhythm, and James Brown's music was more focused on rhythm than, say, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay would be about melody.
Sure.
To me. Okay, so eventually you got out gracefully and survived the gig, and you ended up with the circus, right?
Yeah, I did Ringling Brothers for 2 years.
That's another very challenging gig.
Definitely. A lot of people don't realize how tough circus drumming is and how intricate it is. And it's only because I had the Army background and the James Brown background that I was able to meld that together and do these things that was required in circus drumming, which was mainly what's called catching tricks. And in the drum booth, you have a television monitor. And traditionally, the circus has 3 rings. And where the bandstand is, you normally can't see the furthest ring. So you need that television monitor to see all the acts. And when they do a big trick, you know, then the drums need to do something to accentuate that trick. You know, so, but doing that is not just like sitting and waiting and then drum roll crash. It's like you're playing a song. The song is changing. The conductor is going to different parts of the song because it's not always the same. It's tailored to what the act is doing and where they are in the act. So you're watching the conductor, you're watching the monitor, you're also watching visually, because sometimes it's way up high. See both. And you're playing, you have to keep the groove and then play these rolls around the drums and big crashes, and they're out of time. But you still need to come back
in time,
whether it's on beat 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Plus, it's a long gig, right?
Yeah. When I was there, it got up, I think it was 2 hours and 30 minutes or something like that.
Without a break.
There were times that were, and a lot of times there were 3 shows a day.
Oh, my goodness. And also every style in the world, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you're reading.
That was learned very quickly, is to memorize as much as possible, as quickly as possible, because you don't have time to turn pages. It's very difficult. When I was learning the show, I was fortunate because I got to see a drummer who was doing the gig before me, and I got to practice. So I had a kit, and I was actually playing along, you know, and trying to turn these pages. And I'm like, how am I going to do this when it comes time to do the gig? At that time, there was a lot of electronic drum. There are a lot of loops that were happening that some I was triggering, some the conductor was triggering, some the keyboardist was triggering.
That's just a lot going on, man.
Yeah, the first year was mainly physical. There was a lot of just playing all over the, just a lot of energy being used. The next year when they did a new show, there was a lot of loops involved. So I was triggering sequences and loops left and right, so it was, start this one, stop that one. So it was a lot of double taps, and it was that more mental than anything.
Wow. When I was a little kid, some teacher told me, you got to be good enough to read the chart, read the music, watch the conductor, and still find the pretty girls in the audience. It's good advice, actually.
Yeah, it is, but I'll refrain from talking about that last one.
Yeah, right. Well, water under the bridge. Eventually, when you were on the circus gig, you've traveled in a train, right?
Yeah, most everyone lives and travels by train. And that's also another great part of that gig, because you see parts of the country that you would never see driving on a highway. And it's absolutely beautiful, especially up through the Pacific Northwest.
Wow,
absolutely beautiful.
Well, that's how Ellington traveled on a train.
Yeah.
Back then, there were the president traveled on a train.
Yep, that is true.
Duke Ellington used to say, I travel just like the president. And he did. So when you got off of the... now, that's about when I lost track with you. I heard you on the circus. You were kind enough to invite my wife and I. We had a wonderful, wonderful day. And then you left the circus.
Tennessee.
Exactly. Thank you for that again. And you left the circus and went overseas. So pick up the story for me there.
Actually, after the circus, I actually stayed in the U.S. I relocated to Florida. I was living outside of Orlando. I was working for a very small independent record label. I was recording and performing with some of their artists. And then that record kind of folded. I kind of stayed with the people that owned it because they were musicians. And we did some things there, but during that time, I got a call to play for Bootsy Collins. Bootsy was doing a tribute to James Brown, and originally he was going to use Mousy, who was the other drummer with me with James Brown, going on tour with Maceo Parker. So I guess I was the next best one. So it was me and Jabbo Starks on that gig with Bootsy Collins.
Oh, so you got to work with Jabbo.
I did.
Oh, man.
Got to ride the bus, the plane, everything, and hang out, with a living legend.
Pick his brain all the time.
Yeah.
So
him and Bootsy being living legends,
Yeah. So I imagine it's 50-50 picking his brain and listening to him on stage as well. That's quite the learning experience.
Most definitely. It's one thing to just, listen to the records or catch a concert, but to kind of sit there in a rehearsal and really check out, the people who made these records, these historical records, is more than just a treat.
It's the real thing. I mean, I was looking on the internet last night at, you just punch up Funky Drummer or Cold Sweat, and there's 30 videos of some kid playing that beat. Maybe right, maybe wrong. And none of them are going to grab the original intent of it and soul and heart of it. But to have the guy right there and to share the bandstand with him, that's got to be an experience.
It was an amazing experience. On that gig was Johnny Griggs, who was also a percussionist with James Brown.
Oh, okay.
We did a lot of records.
So how long did that tour last?
It was maybe a year. We didn't do a lot of dates. We did some here in the States. We went overseas a little bit in Japan, and then fizzled out. And then after that, that's when I went overseas. That's when I came here to Singapore for the first time. And
you live in Singapore now?
Yes, but I've been in and out of Singapore.
But you married an Asian woman and you have a family?
I do. I married a Singaporean. Actually, she just came back. She just came back in the room.
I'll follow you guys on Facebook. Yeah. You have a lovely family.
Very much. Yeah, my son is an amazing little boy. He'll be 3 next month, and he teaches himself how to play drums, which is so nice. Yeah.
Well, that's beautiful, man. I love hearing that, and you look so happy too.
Yeah, I have a lot to be happy about.
Good for you, my friend. Good for you. So, what's coming up, or what are you basically doing in Singapore?
Right now I'm just freelancing mostly. But I came back starting kind of in a new vein. I was asked by a startup accelerator to be a part of their program. And basically what it is they put all these people from different backgrounds, whether they have a technical edge, whether they have like a product edge, or they have a domain edge, which is me in music. They put all these people together and they say, find a partner and find something to work on. So your partner will end up being a co-founder for your company.
Oh, that's cool.
And they said, come up with an idea. So I had an idea about training musicians using artificial intelligence and augmented reality.
Oh, cool.
So the artificial intelligence will emulate master musicians and master instructors so that students and normal musicians go through real world training simulations so that when it's time to go out into the world, they're better prepared to do so.
So how far are you from launching that?
Oh, it's years from actually being, a full-blown thing, because the full-blown thing is like being able to sit on the stage with your ultimate favorite musicians and perform music with them. And have them talk to you and train you how to play their music.
Wow, it's a nascent technology, the whole AI thing, and I think there's all kinds of cool stuff coming. They're talking about concerts with people who maybe you see James Brown live again.
Exactly.
Almost live, all but live, or whatever you want to call it. Well, that's great, Eric. I wish you well with that, and keep me in the loop. We've come to the end. I don't like to go too long on these, but I always it always leaves room for you to come back and do another one.
Yeah, I've got a lot to tell you.
Yeah, we're just getting started, but I love all the stories about James Brown. We'll get into more about you, though, next time we do one, okay?
Sure.
All right, man. Peace and love, and take care of that beautiful family of yours.
Thank you. You too, man. And thank you again for having me on. It's great to see you and talk to you again. We need to stay in touch more and talk and rap about stuff.
Let's do that. All right, my brother. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
This is your host, Michael Vospine, and I'd like to thank our friends at Sapien Cymbals, Sound Synergies, Stanton Moore Drum Academy, and Drum Center of Portsmouth. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.